Thanks for tuning in to the Multifamily Mind podcast. In this episode, we learned so much from Stacey Hampton, founder and principal consultant for Asset NOI Consulting, about reframing our approach to communicating with residents. From her resident relations roadmap to communicating intentionally, to her top tips for service teams, this episode has everything you need to create experiences for your residents that will make them stay for years and years to come. Let's see what she has to say. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Multifamily Mind. I'm your host, Steve Wunch, and we're going to jump into a great conversation with Stacey Hampton from Asset NOI. And Stacey, you started us off kind of with a theme in our pre-call and in our talk this morning before we jumped on recording. This is all about, strategy, communication, all geared towards resident retention and resident engagement. And so can you share with the listeners your success story of the plan that you put forth for a client of yours? I think there'll be some great takeaways right up front here that folks can walk away with.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So a few months back, I had a VP of operations reach out to me and said, listen, I want to improve retention. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, I want retention of 65%. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So what is it now? Where are you right now? So anyways.
How big is this hill I've got to climb, right?
Yeah, what is it? So, we talked for a while, and I did an analysis for it. And I came back and said, listen, there's not really any framework for this, so I think we're going to build it together. But we ended up calling it the Resident Relation Roadmap. And as you guys know, attribution for resident retention is really hard to nail down. We know that people renew because maintenance is good, right? And we also know that, rental rates have something to do with why people renew. Sure. But outside of that, it's just really hard to track what drives retention. And so we felt like the best path to go, because this is a pretty exceptional management company. They had lots of great resident reviews from their surveys. And so what we settled on was to build this resident relations roadmap. And I'm going to share a little bit with you guys kind of how we did that, where we started, and we're still actually in the process. So some of the things that I'm working on right now, I'm going to share with you, and we've kind of got it set up where it's sequenced. So That being said, I've worked with their entire team, their marketing team. I've worked with their regional management team and the managers, the maintenance, the leasing agent. It's been a full court press initiative that we've rolled out in sequences.
Love it.
All right.
It takes both sides of the house to effectively, manage the community in the way that it needs to be managed so that residents are happy and want to say yes for another term.
Right. And this is not something we rolled out at a single property. They're just under 9,000 units. So this was at multiple properties. But again, we've rolled it out in phases. So we kind of, the intention of the resident relation roadmap was to really set the vibe and the tone and the feeling of everything that this company does and how they communicate with their residents. So we decided very early on that before we did anything else, before we engaged the team, we were going to deal with the automated messages, right? You don't want to roll out this communication plan with your residents and have your automated communications be dry or simple. Yeah. So we started there. So we went through just basically all the ways that we already communicate with our residents. And so, when a resident or a prospect applicant submits an application, they get an automated response that usually says something like, "Thank you for choosing none such apartments. We'll get back with you, as soon as your application is processed.
Yeah.
We changed that message, and the message went from, just kind of a generic message to, what do we want? What kind of emotion and feeling do we want to create when this resident gets this message? At that point, you're not approving them yet, but there's kind of an unknown that we take for granted. We take for granted that, they know we're processing it, that we received it, but they don't always know what happened next. So we took a two-pronged approach with that one and changed the message and said, we've received your application. We're so excited that you chose us. Here's what's next. And, it just really kind of drove the warmth and the excitement of it. What's the next step? You let them know that their application is approved. That's a party.
Yes,
That's
it is.
exciting for them. I don't care who you are. When you've submitted something to be approved, there's always a tiny bit of anxiety, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So hearing that everything has gone through and you've been approved for anything is just super exciting. So, we worked on that messaging. There's an automated response, and then, the calls, call them up and be like, we're super excited. You've been approved. Are you ready to move? All those things, and just really built excitement around that approval call. So that was a huge one. And before we did that, we had several meetings with each individual team member about the resident relation roadmap and what kind of feelings we were trying to communicate with. How do we want the recipient to feel?
Evoke. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever done anything like that, but, communication, if it's not intentional, it's likely to fall flat. I mean, you've really got to think about when you're talking to somebody, what do I want them to receive? What do I want them to hear?
I love you've been using the word intentional multiple times during our conversation together so far. And I think, that's where so many operators are, I don't want to say missing the mark, but I think it is a lost opportunity to really take a step back like you guys did, look at what's in place and say, how can we, tweak this? All it takes is just a little tweak. I talk about the 1% difference. You don't have to change 100% of what you're doing and who you are and how you do things, but you can't keep doing the same thing the same way and expect a different result. If you do, you're crazy. I mean, that's the definition of insanity. And what you guys have done is you've taken a step back and looked at all this messaging and said, how can we, and I'm going to use a term that I love to use, how can we insert some humanity and some intention into this automated process? And I know that we'll get into some more brass tacks. I want you to kind of continue your tour with us down this road to resident retention, or what do you call it? The resident retention roadmap?
The resident relations roadmap.
Resident relations roadmap. So
it's about the relationship. Yeah, it's a relationship. The roadmap is the relationship we want to have with our residents. What they want, what we want them to receive from us. And so, you said it, humanity. It's about warming up those communications and really building that relationship. So, the next part, right? You've had the application submitted, it's been approved. At that point, it's the move in. And that is like the main event, right? That everything that they've done and you've done up till this point, this is the moment we've been trying to get to. And so this is like one of those major magic moments that I think we're missing the opportunity to get, not only just get on the right foot, but build that relationship and trust. It's a huge trust moment.
It's an all hands on deck moment, and if this goes bad, it's just going to get worse from here.
Yeah, yeah. And frankly,
Yeah,
you've all worked on it as a team at that point, right? You have your make ready, your
yeah,
maintenance. Most of the team has worked on building up to this moment. And so, um, we were really intentional about what do we want the resident to receive, when they move in, when they come to pick up their keys, how do we make that moment magic? And so what they're doing is they're going to the apartment before move in. They're putting in waters, snacks, Tylenols. We call it a moving recovery kit.
I love it.
And like for the communities that don't have like in unit washer and dryers, they're giving them laundry room codes, and just really building up that moment before they get there, so it's almost like a little surprise. And a lot of companies do that,
Yeah.
but here's the additional thing that they did is they are walking the resident comes in the office to pick up the keys. This is a major contact moment. And for the most part, the lease has been signed, the rent has been paid. You probably have everything you need at this point. It's just a formality to pick up the keys. But it's more than that, or it can be. And so their teams, their leasing agents are actually having them follow them on their golf carts and to the apartment and opening the door for them and handing the key
Love, love, love it.
and saying, welcome home. And I honestly, I think that the leasing consultants enjoy it more than maybe even the residents, because it just feels so much more special.
Well, and the leasing consultant is probably the main reason they chose the community anyway. I mean, we've got the same four walls and amenities, and everything pretty much is par for the course when it comes to, unless you've got some really cool Mac Daddy feature that nobody else has, which you do, and it would be yourself. You're the one thing that nobody else has. But we miss the opportunity to really just wow them with that. That welcome home is so important.
Yeah, enjoy the moment. Everybody's done so
Yeah.
much work to get to this point.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Enjoy it, and it makes them feel special. I was a little worried about, and them meaning the leasing consultants, I was a little worried about if they would follow through with that. And so we had a call after we implemented. It's like, this is it, this is the week, we've got all our supplies, we're all on the same page, we're going off the same blueprint. Next week's call, we're going to discuss how that went. And so
Love it.
that call was amazing. All the leasing consultants talking about their experiences and how the residents responded was it gave you the warm and fuzzy. So,
That's
um,
amazing. And you know what? That is going to really set this operator. It's going to set them apart in the market, and people will talk about that experience. 100%, I guarantee it.
yeah, I think so too. I think so too. The other thing is that it'd be great if you could get the whole team together and introduce them. But at this point, they probably only met the leasing agent, maybe the
Yep.
manager. And so that's the other thing that I feel like is missing from that experience is, being able to meet the team. And that's not always feasible. So, how to personalize that. There's a lot of different ways. Right now, they're doing, the manager is sending a message, and there's a little card inside sending a message welcoming them. But in talking to you and the clients that I have that use sales mail, I really think it would be a really great opportunity to send a video
Mm,
of the entire team. It's something that you can create. Doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be elaborate. You got one
yep.
person talking, everybody else waving, and it's evergreen. You could just use it. You could even automate it potentially. I mean, I know we're trying
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
we're trying to blend the personal with the technology,
Yeah.
but humanize those, as you said, those connections and warm them up. And so I think that would be just a showstopper.
Take Stacey's advice. Customize your communications with your residents. A great way to do this, and she said it, not us, use sales mail. Instead of old, boring emails or text messages, send personalized video messages to your residents. Humanizing your communications is going to keep them around for years and years. Let's get back to the conversation. Well, I love, first of all, thank you for plugging sales mail, because typically on this podcast, we don't. However, I think in the context of our, no, it's okay. It's a good thing.
Okay.
In the context of our conversation, I mean, it makes sense to share a resource. You know, it changes the game when you can actually feel like you're meeting somebody face to face, voice to voice. If you can't, one of our colleagues here uses the phrase, when there's a lack of physical proximity, a video message creates virtual proximity. So even if you're not close together in real life, you can still be close together, and you can create that emotion. You can help them feel how excited you are for them to be a part of the community, and how great for a manager to leverage that tool to introduce themselves to a new perspective or a new resident. Because probably if they move in and that doesn't happen, the chance that they may never see the manager is pretty high. Because if everything goes right in the apartment, and if everything, goes as it should, they may never pop back into the office or have a need to. So you really want to leverage the opportunities that you have. And again, there's an opportunity to use that word, be intentional about the kind of message that you're sending, the timing of that message, and use the mix of the resources that you have. Emails are great, but people scan them. At best they scan them. They may not retain what's in them, but a video message, that's something that would really make a lasting impression for sure.
Absolutely. I've been hearing people, particularly when we're talking about, most of our efforts are spent on marketing and getting leases, and all that is super important. But one of the reoccurring themes is, just to kind of go back to what you said, is, you got to meet the prospect where they are. Some people want to talk on the phone. Some people want text. But an email, a video is a lot of that, right? Like it's got all the conveniences of it, and it's got the warmth that, frankly, not even text or phone calls have. It's a second only to, in person. So, an evergreen video that you can use, again and again. It'd be great if you have the time to do an individual video for each person moving in. So now they've moved in, right? And so we've got, what are future communications that we already have, right? So we communicate with, usually the next communication we'll have with them will be a service request.
Sure.
So they submit a service request. Hopefully, during the move-in process, we've provided some sort of guide about the resident portal, which is another great communication tool that's largely underutilized, that we made sure to maximize. But, they submit a service request. They get an automated message: "We've received your request." Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, you want to hear that at least, so they got it. But that's a great opportunity to set expectations. And so a conversation about, if this is something in the message, if this is an emergency, please call, right? Because not all residents know that, someone's not sitting in front of the email 24 hours a day. So, let them know what the next steps are. For the purpose of understanding, I think it's really important, and I did explain that, service requests are handled in the order that they're received, but emergencies are prioritized. And when you have an emergency, just know that we'll be there for you.
Yeah. Love that.
Making them kind of, hopefully gaining some understanding with them of kind of how we handle service requests, and how, they can count on us. And then additionally, if for some reason we gave them a time frame, and this would strictly be up to anybody, but we gave them a time frame. If you don't hear back from us, and this particular company has a 48-hour requirement, all service requests have to be completed in 48 hours. We're like, if this is an emergency and you haven't heard from us, or you don't have, if your service request is not resolved in 48 hours, call us. We want you to escalate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really like, that's what you want to hear. What are you feeling when you submit a service request? You're like, oh my God, something's broke. If it's leaking, you're probably like, oh,
How long is it going to take for them to get here?
And the general consensus of renters, and I say this based on reading, thousands of Google reviews, probably every month, is that they don't believe that we're going to be there for them. Yeah. They worry.
They've either heard stories or they've lived through somebody else's bad service, and so they're expecting. It's sad to say, but I think they do kind of expect the worst until we surprise them with something better, right?
Yeah, so we've got to acknowledge that in some indirect way. We don't want to say we know you've had bad experiences, but that's a sentiment that's so common that we felt like we needed to address it in that message. Yeah. And then additionally, when the service request, when the service technician went to the apartment, there's another opportunity. In a lot of cases, you're leaving a copy of the service request. Many states require that you notify when you've entered the apartment. That's another communication opportunity. So we redesigned, and actually the property management system helped us, the PMS system helped us redesign the work order. And that's great. Here's where the referrals come in. It seems wild to ask for a referral when you've just submitted a service request, but if you've got a standard of 48 hours and all this great messaging, we've got a link there that goes to a landing page built specifically for referrals. And wow. Yeah, it's just for referrals. So if you're trying to refer somebody, you put in their information and it sends the referred prospect a message. It says, somebody likes you an awful lot.
I love it.
And they want to live with you.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, and that's something that I don't think I've ever heard anyone do that at that point. And, to your point, we're probably not asking as often as we have opportunity to do so. So I love that you are kind of serving that up to the residents at a point where they've received good service. They're happy with what's going on, and probably they know somebody who's looking to move,
And we give them two options. Hopefully they'll take one of them. If you're happy with the service, please leave a review. If you're super happy, please refer us, and it goes to a referral landing page. So
that's great.
Yeah, that's improved. And that was something that they were already doing that we were able just to redesign, the work order, essentially the paper copy.
And does that kind of integrate with their PMS so that referral information is captured? Because, sometimes when somebody says they referred a resident, it's not on the guest card, or somebody didn't ask who sent you, So that, I think, kind of solves a couple of issues all in one step, because now you've got that digital footprint from that referral, which is great.
Absolutely. It works just like a website contact form. Essentially, great. Right? Like that's how it's built. So when they put that information in there, it automatically sends the referred person an email, yes. And it goes into the CRM. Like, this person has been referred.
And I wonder, that might be a fun time to insert a video as well, huh?
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, I want people to really start to think about how can we do what we do, but do it differently enough where it really enhances the resident's experience, creates that, that value proposition in their mind that, hey, what's happening here is pretty cool. And it even feels like really uber personalized, because when you do receive a message that's not black and white, nameless, faceless text, it makes a difference. It really creates a relationship. It creates an emotional bond that otherwise wouldn't be there. So as folks are listening, just step back, look at your process, look at all the places where you could potentially insert some humanity into your insanity.
No, exactly. That's why we didn't call it a resident retention roadmap, because we realized that the resident relation roadmap was going to be what retained people. It's like,
Yes.
what specifically? Sure, we've got a goal to retain more residents, but what specifically are we going to do? How are we going to engage in relationship building with our residents? How are we going to earn their trust? And not only that, but how do we make them like us?
Yeah.
You know?
I absolutely love this concept. And, I mean, we're not talking about stuff that's, earth shattering, breaking news, never heard before, but we're just being intentional about our approach and saying, what can we do that's just different enough than what we've been doing to really create that? And it's all about the relationship. So I love how you kind of framed everything within the context of this resident relations platform, because it really, I mean, that word relations speaks volumes to the intention of the owner, to how the team on the site should show up every day, and what they're really truly building with those folks that call their community home is that relationship. So I'm all over this.
I'm telling you, it's been super fun, Steve. You wouldn't think so, but we've really enjoyed it. So like when we were talking with the maintenance guys, they mostly came up with the ideas. By the way, I didn't come up with all this. This is, obviously things I've learned from other people. It's things I've seen. Some of it's my development. Some of it's feedback. And so the maintenance had some really great ideas about kind of what they could do. And one of the things was that, often, whether they're supposed to or not, when they're in an apartment and they see something that's broke, or they end up fixing more than what they did, that's all of us, right? Like whatever we're supposed to be doing, we're always doing a little bit more. You get down the rabbit hole, if you will, right? So
sometimes you can.
Yeah, they would write notes about, hey, I also did this and I also did that. So, if the resident wasn't home, it's like, by the way, I noticed your light bulb was out. By the way, I also this, that. Because a lot of times residents don't know all the things they're doing in their apartment. They often fix things that maybe even the resident wasn't aware of because,
Sure. They know what to look for.
Yeah, they've got the eye for it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they noticed that the residents appreciated that when they were there. I was like, well, do you do it when they're not there? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, well, make sure they know about it. Is it too much trouble to let it know? That was super fun.
Do they have to go back then to the office and create a work order so that the work is captured somewhere in the system and that work is closed out, or do you know?
They should, but they don't.
Well, maybe that's a new way to tweak it even more,
What it comes down to is they're super busy. And, when it comes back to like documenting, oh my gosh, I've always had an incredible relationship with maintenance supervisors. I even say I was raised by one. One of my biggest mentors is a maintenance supervisor. When I started my career, they don't, truth be told, most of them don't care about the paperwork. They don't even want the credit. They're just like, let me get the next thing done. Like in their mind, they're always, they can't be bothered. So I had to be super careful about what I was going to ask them to do, knowing that they're so task oriented and just getting things done. Nothing makes a maintenance supervisor or a tech happy than getting to the end of the work orders.
100%. Yeah, I agree completely.
So they were willing to do
that. That's my operator mind popping into gear there, just to say, oh, we need to capture that.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
You're going to capture it when they renew their lease. Let me hear you say, how you doing?
Yeah, that's right. You're going to capture the resident's heart when they know you noticed something that had to be fixed. Like, how are they going to feel about you? And as you mentioned, you don't always get to meet your residents or engage with them. Our guys girls work during most people's work hours, right? They're at work and their residents are at work. So it was a nice, I got to hear some feedback from them. It was really nice. There were a couple of emails that I'm sure there were more, but just what I seen the following week. So every week I meet with them and kind of find out and, adjust based on what the feedback was and their experience. So that's also the other thing is if you're going to have a resident relations roadmap or plan, you need that feedback. And frankly, a lot of the feedback's been so good and they went above and beyond that we actually added it to our initiative.
I love it. Well, what that does too, Stacey, is it turns us from being a reactive operator, which typically that's what we do. We react. Something happens, we react. But this makes them proactive because they're, while they're in there working, they're doing the maintenance 360 to see what else can I do while I'm here? Because if I don't have to get called back here to replace the light bulb or to change a filter or to stop a running toilet that I hear while I'm here in the hallway fixing the thermostat, that's more time in my day to do other things that are just as important, but it's also changing things from reactive to proactive, which I think is a really big win for not only the residents, but for the service team as well.
You make a super good point there. That, and who knows, that may be why they're so prone to do it, but you're right. It's efficient. You don't want to have to go get the keys, or even if, you have smart locks, you still have to walk back over there. Every time you walk to an apartment, it's more time or drive or whatever you do. It still takes time to go back and forth from wherever you are. So I think it's probably service driven. The reason why they tend to, sometimes they're in there for one work order, end up doing 6 or 7 is what they said. Sometimes they end up doing 6 or 7.
Sometimes, yeah.
But, but they don't have to go back. But, if you don't write it down, if you don't do something, you're not getting credit for it. And the one place we want to get credit for it the most is with the resident. We want you to know that we noticed. So it's been, the maintenance teams have been like really supportive of this. They're big on retention too. And that was the other thing is we really, when we were talking with the maintenance group, we were like, here's how retention benefits you. They know it already. It's not like we're, headline news, but a reminder of why this initiative is so important because they turn less units. And that is an enormous lift for the entire team.
Well, especially when you're looking at a property that has, sometimes, and sometimes it's historically a 65% turnover versus 65% retention. I mean, anything that can be done to close that back door is going to be a benefit for them. And, I was going to touch back on your talking about, make sure you capture that information because the resident wants to know what you did while you were in there. But I also want maintenance folks who are listening, hopefully some of them are listening, how often do you say, man, if we only had one more person on this property, when you don't account for all of the good work that you're doing,
that's true.
The operator sits in an office somewhere and looks at your numbers and says, well, they don't need another person because there's only X number of work orders and X number of hours spent on, these different maintenance issues. So if you're in there doing extra things, you're being proactive. You're really creating that resident relationship between maintenance and resident that matters to keeping them there. But you do want to make sure that you want to take care of yourself. So make sure you get credit for the work that you're doing that is in addition to, because when the rubber meets the road and we need new supplies or we need new people or we need more headcount, those reports, unfortunately, the anecdotal commentary is great and very heartwarming, but it's not going to influence an operator up top who's going to be making decisions regarding payroll, headcounts, all those good things. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree. And I do hope that, one thing I will say is mobile apps have made that better. It's made it a lot better. To what degree, we'll never know because we don't even know how many work orders they're doing when they're in there. But I do think that has definitely improved when they have a mobile maintenance app. It's sometimes hard to get adoption, but it does wonders for tracking and making it easy for them to communicate. They also communicate with the resident through that. So we talked some about resident communications. The other thing is usually when a work order is closed out, what happens? an automated message. It goes out. Exactly. You can put a survey into that automated message. You can also, it would be a great time to submit a video. Can you imagine if you put a video of the service request, letting them know, hi, my name is Stacey. I just wanted to let you know that I took care of your service request today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy your home.
And I'm getting a little bit better at the art of selfless promotion, or the selfless. Well, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? But like, it would take you as long to write a note about what you did and thank them as it would to film a quick sales mail video on your mobile device. And then you can have a call to action button beneath your video that says, click here to submit a survey. And it would lead them right to your survey portal. It makes it seamless. And so again, there's just an opportunity to kind of, here's the process that we've been using. How can we tweak that just a little bit differently and get a different result? For one, it's building relationships between the maintenance team and the residents. There's a face to put with the name. And, when you've got a lot of residents living at your communities who might be older, maybe they're living by themselves, to know who's been in their home, or to know who's coming, knocking at their door. And when they look through the peephole, they're going to have some kind of recognition. I mean, these are all just different ways to approach what we typically do anyway, but to really personalize and up the level of service and the experience that the residents are receiving.
Connect, much like we do on LinkedIn or social media.
Yes.
Even if you've seen someone on social media, and this is kind of one of the examples that we talked about. So let's say you've never met them in person, but you've seen them on LinkedIn, or you've seen them on Twitter. And then have you ever later met somebody that you've seen those pictures and videos of, and you don't, it's like you've known each other your whole life?
100%. Just make sure you look like your picture.
Yeah, everybody's on to that one.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hi, folks. I wanted to take a quick 30-second break so that I could say, I hope you're enjoying today's episode, which couldn't be brought to you without being superpowered by Sales Mail. I mean, really, we couldn't produce this content without them. Sales Mail is the easiest and best tool for sending personalized video via email, text, and CRM. So, if you really are enjoying today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you would visit salesmail.com so you can check out how our solutions might impact your business communications. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn as well. Okay, that's enough. Now back to the conversation. We've kind of gone from, prospect to move-in day to now service of the residents. I kind of want to talk a little bit about, are there some specific touch points that you're recommending, or some different nuances that are changed for this partner of yours in terms of from the time they move in until that renewal letter gets to their door? What kind of touch points does the leasing team have to keep that connection strong? Because, the last thing you want is they move in and the next time they hear from you is, oh, here comes your $200 increase. Hope you'll say yes. We love you. Kiss, kiss.
Yeah. Very, very good point. So there's two key areas that we focused on, which was resident appreciation, and looking at that in the way that not all residents show up for resident events. Right. Typically somewhere between 10 to 15% of residents, best case scenario, show up for a resident event. So how do we connect with the residents, more often and show our appreciation? We call them appreciation. There's not an event there that happens that isn't a resident appreciation drawing. We want them to hear that we appreciate them, because we want them to understand. We want them to know that's the emotion, the intent of the emotion we're trying to communicate. Yeah, we appreciate you. So, you hear about various different events. It's like National Donut Day. It's it's our next resident appreciation event, National Donut Day. So it's let's don't do anything without communicating what it is we want the resident to receive. So, go big, go small. We looked at a lot of different things. We looked at the events, but then we also looked at resident appreciation on the whole, and like what makes people feel acknowledged, what delights them, the unexpected. So, we built budgets for each of the properties based on unit counts for just random gifts. So like Amazon movie codes, Starbucks, and they actually text those out.
Love it.
To just random residents, right? We did end up implementing a resident reward program, which I think, is really starting to gain steam. Yeah, it's just another way to engage. I mean, I don't know if you've got any rewards programs that you're a part of, but like I'm at the point now where I don't buy anything significant without seeing who's got the best reward on it.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Racking up my airline points, whatever.
Are they doing this on their own, or are they partnering with somebody in the on the vendor supplier side to do that resident reward program?
We ended up partnering, so we did both. We did some of the stuff on our own because we wanted the teams to feel the excitement of giving something away or being appreciative with the residents. We wanted them to be able to personally delight people. So the maintenance, everybody has something that they can give to the resident, has the ability to give a card, a gift card or whatever to a resident. DoorDash, they do some DoorDash. And then the rewards program. So we can make sure that consistently residents are getting the opportunity to engage. They're using a couple of different gamification apps for various like little virtual scratcher cards, but I don't want to say what company they're using, but there's a couple of them out there and they're terrific.
Yeah, I've seen it. And, even back in the day, so I love the phrase that says, what's old is new again. Because I remember working for Archstone back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we had a coupon packet that we would give residents when they moved in, and it encouraged them to stay with us. Every year they got a touch-up paint. If they stayed with us for 4 years, they got new carpet. If they stayed with us for, I don't remember what all the different touch points were, but they were coupons that the leasing consultants would actually sign and fill out with their move-in day. So it really made the move-in packet feel even more special because it wasn't just a bunch of, promotional materials from restaurants in the area and coupons for free pizza at Papa John's, but it was like, here's our resident appreciation program. It was called the Seal of Service. And as you continue to live with us, we're going to show you how much we appreciate you by offering you these things. And, everybody wants, what am I going to get out of this? I'm paying you, $2,200 a month, and now I'm going to pay $200 more. What am I going to get out of this relationship? And that's a really great way to demonstrate, hey, you do get something for the time that you spend here as a resident, and we really appreciate you. And here's how we're going to show you that.
I love that. Yeah. The coupon idea. I've never had the leasing agent hand them out, but I think that's a really cool idea. And actually, I'm glad you brought it up because the next part of the initiative for us was remind them of the why. Why did they move in there? And so we were very intentional about promoting the community and promoting the amenities. So example of that, bought some new coffee or new creamers or, snack, take a picture of the coffee bar and remind them that, hey, you can stop by anytime for a cup of coffee. We just got, whatever Nespresso or if you have a machine, you know what I mean? What's in there?
Yeah.
You can take pictures of the pool, throw some freebies away, a couple of floaties, have a cooler, take a picture and remind them of the benefits they get by living there, even to the degree of, events that are happening at the property or taking pictures of those resident appreciation events, the giveaways that you do, but also, events that, what are they close to? What's going on at this restaurant over here or the park or whatever? Just really reminding them of the why and promoting the actual living of that community. at that community.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that like 15% on average typically is the percentage of residents who actually attend a resident appreciation event. But I don't know what the number is, but statistics do show that even if they don't come to those things, when we leverage our social media at the property level to highlight those resident appreciation events, to highlight the things that we're doing within the community that we serve, folks appreciate that and they place dollar value on, hey, that's the property that I live at. So even if they don't go, just the mere fact that we're promoting all the great things that happen as you become a resident here, that has influence in their perception of value and their likelihood to renew.
Absolutely. And by the way,
so never underestimate that stuff.
Include your prospects in those promotions. It's super easy. It's a setting within your CRM or within your PMS. Go ahead, any promotions that you're doing as far as text or emails, go ahead and let them start seeing what life will be like when they move in with you at your community. So that was just like an easy, simple switch we flipped on. But
and if they don't lease with you, start sending a few messages that say, hey, look what you're missing out on.
I would love that, Steve.
You remember back in the day, we used to send postcards, and people hated it. But we would send we would get postcarded. All of our residents would get a postcard from the comp. So what we ended up starting to do was, we don't want you, we want your friends. So if you know someone who's moving, please refer them to us. So that's kind of a fun way to reposition that whole idea. But like, look what you're missing out on. I told you it was going to be fun to live here, and it is. Wouldn't you like to be a part of this? And then who knows, maybe when their lease comes up, they'll come back to see you.
I know that's right.
Little remarketing technique there.
People remember this stuff, though. It's not, sometimes it's not about, people get really focused in on just being very, very professional, which is super important, but you don't have to sacrifice warmth for professionalism. And it's okay to be a little funny too. We definitely did some little funny.
Well, and we could probably talk on this topic for days, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time, including yours and our listeners. So I kind of want to put a nice bow on this and say, really what it all comes down to is every opportunity that you have to interact with a prospect or a resident is an opportunity to either establish a relationship with someone or to renew a relationship with someone. And so, we've automated so many different parts of our process. To your point, through our conversation, we've talked about all the different places where now it's automation that's kind of taken over for us. We don't have people coming in the office anymore, dropping off a rent check like we used to. And we could say, thank you so much for paying your rent on time. And while you're here, is there anything that you need in your apartment? So now we have to strategically think about, how do we still do that same thing, provide that same level of service, thank them for paying their rent on time, because behavior that is rewarded is behavior that is repeated. How can we thank them for what they're doing, show the appreciation, to your point, and then also, what else can we do? What else do you need from us? And if everything's fine, that's great. But if on the chance that there's something that we didn't know about, we don't have those in-person touch points anymore, So your roadmap really kind of sets these folks up for some successful touch points all throughout their life cycle with the property. It all comes down to this. People will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And if you can make them feel valued, appreciated, and respected, and make them feel good about coming home, so when they drive in your property, they are glad to be home. It's like their refuge. If they can feel that way, then you are doing the right thing. And I think your results, your retention, you can get 65% retention on a property that does that kind of stuff.
Well, as of the month of March, we were at 59, so we're up 3%, and there's still more to roll out, right? Like, we're looking at an average. So the retention and every month has gone up. The 12-month average was 56%. We're, at 59 now, and that's the 12-month average. So we've had some mega months. And
that's amazing.
I sometimes wonder if it actually is the entire organization saying together, we want people to stay, and all the value that we built in to how that benefits them. I think is part of it. It's working, and they're getting better at it. I really believe they're going to exceed the initiatives they already have. Yeah. One of the last things I want to tell you is, we're in the process. This is one of our next initiatives that we'll be rolling out next month, is building a resident billboard, which is essentially a landing page that we plan on. After the application is submitted, it's kind of a private access. Now you're in the club. You can see all the great things that happen. So we're building up content for that right now. And I'm actually doing something similar. I've done all this at multiple communities and different companies, but this is like the pinnacle of, pretty much towards the end of the project. So this roadmap started at, rewriting automated emails, and now we've been building up content for each property to have a bulletin board that the residents are referred to and saying, look who was on the billboard, and the prospects or the applicants are now a part of. So, and
again, it has that intentional feel. It's all about making them feel appreciated and, extending that relationship beyond the sale, extending that relationship beyond the move-in. Yardi has when I'm on Rent Cafe where I live, there's a bulletin board, but it's so unpersonal. It's just black and white text on a page. And from what it sounds like, and from what I know about you, this landing page for residents is going to be something that's really warm, engaging, inviting, and most of all, demonstrating that you appreciate them.
Absolutely. Yeah, they've done some fun stuff. We did a pet parade. At one of the communities, they did. I'm trying to think of one of the other the pet parade was my favorite, but
I love it.
Yeah, it's all videos and photos. Oh, the best one was it was kind of like an HGTV style where residents submitted pictures of what they see as organized or decorated. You know what I mean? And so they picked them and they got put on the bulletin board and they won prizes. And so they did a whole campaign. Well, it will be on the bulletin board. They're being created now. So we're anticipating them to go live, and then they'll just be refreshed going forward, just swap out pictures and videos. But it's been beautiful building it up and seeing what we're going to put on there.
Well, you must be really proud of the work you're doing. And I know that your partners appreciate your creativity, your ingenuity, your innovative spirit, and your let's get in there and get it done attitude. So we will make sure that everybody who's listening knows how to find you. We'll link to your consultancy, which is, again, Asset NOI. And everybody will know how to get a hold of you. So if there's more that you want, like I said, we could keep talking because you are chock full of great ideas, and I can't wait for folks to connect with you either through your consultancy or on LinkedIn. So we'll make sure they know how to find you and give them all your good digits.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on. There's one more thing I want to say.
Okay.
Share this podcast with everybody on your team so you can all be having a conversation about this together. We can put the fun back into multifamily. Share this with your regionals, share it with your maintenance team, there's no one who isn't involved in resident relationships and retention. So thank you for hearing me out and having me on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Stacey Hampton from Asset NOI. You've been watching The Multifamily Mind. I'm your host, Steve Wunch, and we look forward to having you back next time. Cheers. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Multifamily Mind podcast, brought to you by Sales Mail, the easiest way to send personalized video via email, text, and CRM. To learn more, go to salesmail.com. And remember, always be audacious. Until next time, I'm Steve Wunch. Have a great week.